Hello, Howard. How are you?
I'm good, Nizam. Great to be here.
And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interview.
No, it's honestly it's a pleasure, and I'm really excited to dive in and to share lots of cool stuff with your audience.
Awesome. So, friends, we have Howard Cooper. He is one of the UK's leading rapid change therapists, known for helping people to create rapid shifts in their thinking. Howard rejects the notion that deep and lasting change needs to take a long time. Of course, we see even years of therapy. I have seen people like they will be saying that Howard that they have been seeing a therapist for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Oh my God! Like okay, drawing on a variety of psychological tools, Owen has supported over 2,500 individuals over the past 19 years on an international level, regularly bringing about transformational changes to their lives. So, Howard, how did it all started? What makes you call your work as a rapid change?
Well, the whole idea of rapid change was born out of necessity
Okay.
because I was pretty screwed up as a teen, and I
Okay.
needed something that actually worked effectively.
Mhm.
When I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed as having a severe panic attack and anxiety disorder.
Mhm.
And I was sent to a psychotherapist, and I had 3.5 years, week in, week out, week in, week out. And every session was really nice. I enjoyed it. It was very pleasant talking to her. She was really a lovely lady.
Mhm.
But at the end of 3.5 years, I really wasn't much better.
Okay.
But it seemed to me that she was doing a lot of stuff to help me understand why I was like I was.
Mhm.
The problem is that understanding why you are like you are doesn't always change or make you better.
Yes.
So at the end of sort of 3.5 years of therapy, I was like, well, now I'm just smug and have problems. Now I just have a theory as to why I am like I am rather than any tools.
Hmm.
So for my own sake, on my own mental health, I had to find some tools that really seemed to be what I would call solution focused.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I entered the world of, I found the world of NLP and neuro linguistic programming
Mhm.
and hypnotherapy and mindfulness and meditation, and um, began to sort of become a collector of as many different tools as I could to help me change my own patterns of thinking. And because stuff worked better than anything else I had come across so far, I thought, right, I've got to train up. I've got to find how I can do this and qualify in this so that I can blend all these things together and then help other people. Because quite frankly, Nizam, I don't want other people to be struggling for 3.5 years in therapy week
Yes,
in, week
yes.
out when you can help them much quicker. So for me, this was the idea of rapid change. It was, how quick can we do something? But what I would like to say is it's not about clicking the fingers and making it happen straight away.
Yes, yes, I agree.
It's not an instant fix.
Yes.
It's very much about how quick can you do it. So
Okay.
I remember, and what I mean by that is this. I remember when I first started out, I don't know whether I dare mention this. Your listeners might be outraged, but I remember ringing and pretended to a bunch of hypnotherapists that I had a fear of flying.
Okay. Okay.
I wanted to see what they would say on the phone and like how much did they charge? What would they do? How long would it take? And I lost count of the number of people who said to me things like, we use the 10 session approach. And I said to them, well, what if I'm okay after 2 sessions? And a bunch of them went, you won't be.
Okay.
And I thought, how crazy. Like, they're already telling me that it's going to take 10 sessions.
Mhm.
In other words, they have a frame of time in their mind for how long this is going to take that has nothing to do with me or my responses.
Okay. Okay.
Isn't that nuts? I mean, surely the idea is that, if we can help someone see what's going on or find the bit in their brain to kind of just help them connect some dots in a more effective way, then that could lead to change. And I'm always present in each session thinking it could be today. This could happen,
Okay.
rather than it's probably going to be 3.5 years. That for me is rapid, you
Okay.
know.
Still one more question, Howard. See,
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I've seen people. saying that they are under therapy for years, and you yourself are a live example of undergoing 3.5 years. Yet, what is like, using your rapid change methods, whatever the tools you have developed for yourself out of your research, what is on an average that a person gets out of their anxiety issues? What do you see as an average?
Most people I see for 2 sessions.
Average 2 sessions.
Yeah, most people, and mainly because everyone I see, I book in for a program of 2 appointments.
Okay. And what is the duration of each session yours?
90 minutes.
90 minutes,
Yeah.
2 sessions is the average, and they're out of it.
Well, you say out of it, they have the tools they need to begin to make the changes and to continue the changes. So I think it's an important distinction, actually, but sometimes it's important to make the distinction between change and results.
Okay.
So, for example, 4.5 years ago, I lost about, I'm trying to do it in, what is it, 4.5 stone. What's that in metric, in pounds? Hold on. 14 times 4, it's about 60 pounds in weight.
Okay.
And there were people who hadn't seen me for like a year.
Okay.
And when they saw me for the first time, they went, "Whoa, look at you." They go, "You've changed."
Okay.
And I would always go, "No, you're seeing the results of the change."
Okay.
Because here's the thing. I had a really unhealthy relationship with food for a long time. I was eating junk. I would go and pig out. I wouldn't. And there came a moment that I decided to do things differently. And I made a change in my thinking in terms of my relationship with food. That change was quick. But if you put me on the scales and you weighed me before I had the mental shift and after the mental shift, the scales would have been the same.
Yes.
Yet everything was now heading in a different direction.
Okay.
So for me, what I'm looking to do in 2 sessions is to give them a whole different way of looking at things, so that by default, it's going to get better and better and better and better. And it is true, some people will have those 2 sessions and they just report to like, "Oh, it's like a switch has just gone off. It's amazing." Other people will go, "Yeah, like I still get a bit anxious but I'm not suffering in the same way, and it's getting better and better." But I don't like the idea of week in, week out stuff being used as a psychological crutch for people.
Okay, got it. And how is it like your work restricted to people in UK, or like you work with clients worldwide?
I work with people all over the place, and I mean, especially, what with Corona and COVID and people doing more and more online sessions, people that thought that you couldn't do things online, suddenly they've been thrust into this world where everything's online these days. But I was doing Zoom and Skype sessions for 6-7 years, well before Corona came in. And I have a YouTube video over on my channel, Howard Cooper's Rapid Change Works on YouTube, where I talk about how effective is an online session, and can it really work well. And I think the bottom line is, for change to happen, change happens in the other person's head.
Yes.
So as long as you're on the side where your head is, it should be okay.
Yes.
It seems
wonderful.
we're just having a conversation and helping people see things differently. So
yes.
I think the only difference is that if someone comes to see you and they're face to face, sometimes they give it more gravitas. They give it more, "I'm here, I'm with him." And whereas if they're on the computer and their emails are popping up, an Amazon delivery is knocking on the door and the dog's barking, they might be distracted. But if they're willing to kind of engage and go, "I'm going to earmark this time, and I'm going to shut the door, put my emails off, and really treat this as a proper full-on session and give it that same level of focus and attention," then it can be just as effective.
Okay, wonderful. And how would you have created online program for anxiety? So could you please tell about that?
Well, I found that I was working with lots and lots of people, and when I'm working with someone one-on-one, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing I'm going to, of course, tailor what I'm doing to exactly their needs. And I'm going to go at the right pace and the right rhythm for them based on their responses. Having said that, there was also a lot of stuff that I kept finding myself repeating.
Okay.
There's concepts and themes that seem to keep coming up repeatedly. And I thought, well, this is, what if I could make this stuff available to people who might be able to then self-apply, take these concepts and be able to apply it to exactly their needs. And then, quite frankly, I can help more people that way, because there's only one of me.
Okay.
More and more people can get an online program which covers 80% of the stuff that I might do in a one-on-one session.
Wow.
And have some great benefits. So I created, it was during COVID, I created, if people sign up to it, they'll notice that I've shaved my head, because I had one of those lockdown haircuts where, hairdressers were closed. So I did a buzz cut, but there's some really good stuff on there. And the results that we've been getting, it's about 3.5 hours of material in bite-sized chunks, and people can work through at their own rate. And there's comments on, so you can learn from each other, others going through the course. But I've had some amazing responses, of people going through the program. And, for me, it's just another thing that I wanted to find lots of ways of, whatever people's budget, whatever people's needs, time, whereabouts, I wanted to find more and more ways of being able to get people good quality anxiety beating stuff.
Okay.
Make it available.
So that's how it came up. So
right.
Awesome. And you have also created one monthly support group as well. So could you please tell about that?
Yeah. So I have a monthly support group, and it's the last Thursday of every month. I go live for 90 minutes. And it started during Corona and lockdown. I was asked by the council to do a program, a support group. During COVID, it was when we were told that it was going to be a 12-week lockdown. That was it, just 12 weeks. Okay. I'm laughing now because it seems so ludicrous.
Yes.
And I thought, well, why don't I put together a 12-week support program? And once every 2 weeks, I'll share some ideas and strategies for a bunch of people who are feeling anxious about this situation, and we can begin to help. And we ended up having a huge number of people sign up for it. It was really, really great. But at the end of the program, it A, became clear lockdown hadn't finished. And B, there were a bunch of people going, we've loved this, Howard. It's been great. And it's been really helpful. Is there anything else you're doing? And I went, don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. And they said, well, we'd like something. Okay. And I said, okay, what about if once a month we carry on in this kind of way? But we'll do it more question and answer. I'll have some topics to share in mind.
Okay.
But we'll get a bunch of people who are interested in developing themselves from a personal development viewpoint, in pushing the boundaries of how can we explore and develop and become resilient and mentally strong? How can we, somewhere where people can go once a month and keep up the momentum on that personal journey. But maybe they've got specific questions as well, where they're saying to themselves, I've got this thing coming up and I'm really anxious. And they don't have to go to a therapist. They can come on the last Thursday of every month. They come along and they say, Howard, could you cover this today? And sometimes we'll get people on board and we'll go, let's do a demo. Let's do an exercise, and we'll choose someone to work through their issues or to do a process. And we all learn from that, but it's just a way of keeping it. And it's very, very low cost, but it's a good way. Sometimes I have clients that work with me for 2 sessions and then they choose to be part of that group. Okay. Sometimes just to keep their mind and their head in the right place. Sometimes people will do the online program and then do that. Sometimes people just come out the blue and do the monthly program. Why not? Give it a go, So it was just another way of finding a way of helping and support people in a different way.
Wonderful. And Howard, since you have been into therapy for the past 19 years, you have explored hundreds of tools, you have worked with almost 2,500 plus people, and you did a lot of research. So are there any plans that you would want to train other coaches and therapists with your system so that they can produce similar results and their clients can get benefited with your research?
I'm beginning to put together some trainings
Mhm.
so that I can essentially share the way I work with people who are interested in helping others, so that they can get similar results too. And I would say watch this space, because over the next year, this is going to, I'm going to start essentially releasing this. And likely what I'll start doing is some small courses. Potentially the first one will be around sharing how I work with people over anxiety, specifically,
Mhm.
and start sharing those tools and ideas, and creating a forum and a format where people can also get help and support, so that they can go, well, look, I've been trying this out. This is the results that I'm getting. Have you got any suggestions? Have you got any tools or some tips? So it's just trying to get that package right, because if I'm brutally honest, I think there's a lot of training out there that from armchair therapists, i.e. people that just train others and aren't working in therapy or working with real clients. And sometimes there are people that make these like big claims, like, I have 100% success with every single person. And here's the one technique that I will teach you. And if you just do this, it will get rid of all. No, I've struck out with clients. I've not got results with people too. And whilst I'm good and I've got better over the years, I wanted to find a way of helping people who are really serious, not about having the next quick fix, but some really good integrative skills that they can apply, and some feedback mechanisms for what, and troubleshooting for what on earth do I do when it doesn't seem to work.
Yes. So that was very honest confession. Over despite having 19 years, almost 2 decades of experience, still you have said that you have stuck with your clients and you did further research to make it better. Because I came across certain therapists like 100% results one session.
Right.
Any issue, they never come back, and all that tall claims. Even I came up
Right.
with such. So thank you for that honest confession.
It's one of my bugbears when people say, I mean, I had a client a few years ago and they literally came in and they looked so depressed and so upset and so beyond help. And I even said to them, I said, listen, I said, you don't look like you're in a good place right now.
Okay.
And they looked at me and they said, I just don't believe anyone can help me. And I said, what makes you so sure? And they went, quote, I saw a hypnotherapist who has a 100% success rate and they couldn't help me. And I'm laughing because they don't have a 100% success rate then.
Yeah.
They can't do, so I just think, if people are in this field, or we're training others, or we're sharing these tools with other people who are interested in change work, I think we actually have a responsibility not to over egg our results, but to make it okay to fail and to get up and to try different stuff and to figure out what works and what doesn't. And it's okay. We all find our way,
I think that is one of the biggest message for other therapists, coaches. Doesn't matter what kind of change work, healers, etc. To be as honest as possible, that they can say that yes, they can give it a try. They will do their best, but it's not about luring people like with 100% result, single session. Like, oh my god, this advertisements itself scares me.
Right? Yeah. Well, I also think that, I mean, look, I remember when I first started out and going on some early trainings, with some of the good and the greats who perhaps led me to believe that they also always have these unreasonably high results with every single person. And then when I started seeing real clients and going, hold on a moment, why aren't I getting these same exceptional results straight away?
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I must be terrible. What's wrong with me? Whereas the answer was nothing was wrong with me. I'm just beginning and I'm learning. And even the people at the top aren't getting 100%. So I think actually, having reasonable expectations is helpful overall, both with clients and other people doing this work.
Excellent. That's such a great message from you, Howard. Like, especially people who are getting started or who are planning to get into this area, or people who are comparing themselves with the biggies of the industry. They
Right.
have, like, not that every client is they are having 100% success rate. Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Exactly. And I started asking people. I had a podcast, which I still do occasionally, but I'm not doing it as regularly, called the Rapid Change Matters podcast,
Mhm.
where I interviewed other therapists and agents of change. And I interviewed lots of the well-known, the big names, and it was absolutely wonderful to do. But I started asking people about, like, tell me about your biggest screw-ups, and tell me about the moments that you couldn't help someone. And it was really fascinating to see, like, who could answer honestly, and who would just go, there are a bunch of people who would say things like, well, someone came to see me for weight loss and I couldn't help them, but I managed to stop them smoking instead, and then magically they lost weight, and that was my biggest screw up. Sorry, that's not the biggest screw up. Don't, honestly, really. That's like, that silly thing when you go for a job interview and they say, what are your weaknesses? And you say, well, I'm a perfectionist. I'm just too good at my job, and I care too deeply about doing a good job. That's my weakness. No, it's not. That's bullshit for job interview. And I felt like a lot of people would give me that kind of response. So I have great respect for people that are just brutally honest and go, yeah, this is where I screwed up, and this is. But more importantly, not just I screwed up, but this is what I learned from it, and this is how I do things differently so that I wouldn't make that mistake again.
True. Wonderful. So you have also authored a book.
Yes.
So could you please tell about that?
Oh, this book, Nizam, I have to tell you, this has been a joy, an absolute joy. Of all the things I've ever done, this book that I've written, which is a children's story, has given just me so much joy. And I have it, I have it right here. And it's called The Rustle of Leaves.
The Rustle of Leaves.
And it's a book for 4 to 9-year-olds with beautiful illustrations. I mean, absolutely just gorgeous. And it's designed, it tells the story in rhyme, which is a metaphor to help 4 to 9-year-olds understand how anxiety really works so that they can better challenge their own fears. I work with kids, but normally sort of 10 above, 10 plus, because I think very young, there are two things. One, I'm not sure that they're always old enough to have some of the psychological thinking that's required to be able to respond to the way I work. But also, I don't think always that children being sent to therapists is always a good thing anyway. And sometimes you get parents and they ring me up and they go, Howard, my child is anxious. Okay. Quick, help them. I'm like, well, how long has this been going on for? The whole week. Right. But here's the thing. If every time a kid gets anxious, mum or dad just picks up the phone and brings them to see Magic Howard, and Magic Howard makes it go away, even if I could, what's the child learning? They're learning that whenever they have problems, someone else makes it go away. And they don't learn to be able to become resilient or resourceful or be able to do it themselves. And I think that's really problematic. So what I wanted to do is to write a book that essentially helps children understand more about the patterns of their own mind. Okay. And I gave some notes for parents for discussions they can have with their kids to help their kids develop for themselves some more resilient patterns. But I was using this story with sort of 10, 11-year-olds as a metaphor 5, 6 years ago. It came to me once in a session, and they seemed to respond well to it. And over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I've added bits to the story and bits and more bits. And finally, once it was all there, I sat down one night and it just tumbled out of me. And then for the last year, I've been working with an illustrator in America who's brought it to life in the most incredible way. And it's been being sold on Amazon. It's called The Rustle of Leaves. And the day after it came out, We hit the charts, and we were 3 above the Gruffalo by Julia Donaldson. So I was over the moon, quite frankly. Yes, definitely worth checking it out. The Rustle of Leaves.
I'll be sharing the Amazon link as well in the YouTube channel.
Perfect. Yeah.
And okay, Howard, you said that, like, okay, just how long your child, your son or your daughter, whatever your kid has been having anxious, this anxiety. Then they said, like, for the past 1 week, 2 weeks, that is fine, understandable. I've come across certain parents, what they have tried everything. They tried to explain their children and all that. There's sudden behavioral changes in this kids. Either they stopped going to school, or they stopped talking to their friends and siblings. Uh, all, all of a sudden, they become silent. And when they're taken to therapists, like they talk very normal. They don't open up. They don't share. So how do you deal with such children who don't open up at all? They don't want to talk, and they say that, yeah,
Right.
everything is normal.
Right. It depends what age, but typically, if you get a child or someone that sits and doesn't want to open up,
Yeah.
I deal very, very badly with it.
Oh,
Not very well at all.
okay.
I wish there was a magic answer of, like, I use the magic technique and it opens them up. Look, there are a few things that I tend to do. I used to work as a magician many years ago. So I often, if I've got young kids, I often do magic.
Okay.
And get them laughing and joking, and it's quite disarming. So
Okay.
the whole thing, and I say, well, let's have a chat. And I tell you what, let's in a little bit, once we've done a couple of things, I'm curious to see if we can do some magic with your brain.
Okay.
Right. But I'm going to need you to tell me a few more things. But I tell you what, if we do well, I'm going to teach you how to do a trick. So you can fool all your friends, or can we find ways to bring them out their shell? And I think part of it is being conversational and not treating yourself too seriously, or being a therapist.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, put yourself in a kid's position. They're anxious, they're nervous. Mum and dad says, I'm going to take you to see someone.
Oh.
And they sit there and someone goes, oh, it's, and they might be nice, but they're going, it's lovely to see you. What makes you anxious?
What the hell do they know? Like, what does this anxious mean?
And whereas if you can be very relaxed and conversational with them. The other thing that I've done in the past is, and actually I've had a few youngsters who have really struggled to say anything. And part of their anxiety has been talking to anyone, including me. So when you say to them, so what's going on? They just cry or get anxious or freak out. And in those situations, what I've often done is say to them, I've often had the parents there, and I'll often say, you know what, like my concern is that they're going to sit there worrying about, like, what am I going to say next? Or when am I going to ask them a question next? So let's take the pressure off. I'm not going to ask you anything. You don't have to say anything or do anything. So you can just take a big breath of relief, because you don't have to do anything. I'm going to just talk to mum, or I'm going to talk to dad. I'm going to share with mum or dad some really cool things about how the brain works. And if you want to listen, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I want to alleviate the pressure to respond on the basis that they're more likely to hear something of value when I'm talking under the guise of talking to someone else, so that they don't feel that feeling of like, I hope he doesn't talk to me. I hope he doesn't talk to me. And often I found in those situations, they often pipe up and start interacting a little more, because they're volunteering it rather than we're going into interrogation mode.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah, what works? And any tips to parents, Howard, what you want to say? Because there are certain parents who don't know what to deal or how to deal with their anxious kids who have been, of course, obviously for the long term suffering the child is going through, and any tips to such parents?
Yeah. um, I think one of the biggest things, well, I have two big pieces that I think are worth sharing. One is a bit out, one may make people feel a little bit challenged. So we'll wait and we'll pause and we'll do that after. And people can listen going, oh my word, what's he going to get to? Oh no. So it's worth hanging in there. But I think one of the worst things that we can do sometimes, we often find ourselves doing from a place of good intentions, but it's not helpful. So we often say things to children like, just don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Just relax. Just calm down. Don't worry. You'll be fine. And what we have is these, what I would call platitudes, where we're just kind of, and I even caught myself doing this with my son. My son, when he was about 5, 6 years old, I think he'd watched a YouTube video about the Great Fire of London on kids' YouTube. And he became terrified of fire. And every night he would start screaming. We'd put him to bed and he'd start screaming, Daddy, Daddy, help, Daddy. And I'd go running up, what is it? And he was like, I'm scared. And I'd go, what of? Like, what? He'd go, fire. And for like, this went on for a week or so. And I just kept saying to him, no, don't be silly, George. You'll be fine. Don't worry. It's okay. Nothing to worry about. You're safe. But he just kept doing it. And after a couple of weeks of this going on, I had this moment where I was like, duh, why am I doing this thing when I tell others they shouldn't do this?
Okay.
Because here's the problem. Fire is dangerous.
Yes.
Like the idea that I'm telling my son, don't worry about fire. Like, that's nonsense. That's ridiculous. But here's the problem. He doesn't know how to navigate his own safety. He doesn't have the certain knowledge that I have. So the question is not how do I just say, don't worry about it? It's how do I give him that wisdom that will help him so he can navigate his own safety. So the next time he screamed, Daddy, Daddy, I'm terrified of fire, I went, right, you should be terrified.
Okay.
And he went, what? Sorry? Like, huh? And I went, yeah, because fire's dangerous. And his eyes just went big. And I knew I had his attention. I said, so let me show you how we stay safe. And I went and showed him that we have these smoke alarms in our house. He didn't know about smoke alarms. I had like no idea that they existed. And I said, listen, do you know what this is? He went, no. I said, this is a smoke alarm. If ever there's a fire and there's heat or smoke, it makes this sound. And I showed him the sound it makes. Woo, 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 woo. And he went, right, okay. And I said, so if you can't hear that, it means there's no fire and there's no threat. He was like, right. So the next night, he goes to bed and I hear him going, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I go running up. What is it? He goes, I'm scared. I said, what of? He went, fire. And I said, shh, what can you hear? What can you hear? And he went, nothing. And I went, right. What does that mean? He went, oh yeah, it means I'm safe. Ah, right. We did that a few nights and suddenly he doesn't think about it anymore. Because here's what's likely happening. When he has the, I'm worried about fire, he's remembering now to check to listen for the sound of the alarm himself. And now he can reassure himself. So I think a really good place, if any parents are listening, wondering, how do I help my child? Is there any validity to the fear? Like, is it something that actually does pose a threat? Or is there a way, of helping your child learn to navigate their own safety?
Okay.
And I think that can be really, really useful. And the thing that I said might ruffle some people's feathers is this. If there are parents out there wondering how we can help our children with anxiety, my message to you from the bottom of my heart and coming from a very good place is sort your own shit out first.
Okay.
Like if you are a parent who is anxious and worried and freaking out, my child has anxiety and what do I do? And you're anxious and you're struggling. That's not going to make the situation better. So children pick up, and we can be a role model and we can lead by example. So there's nothing wrong with getting anxious or having suffering, but like show them how you navigate that yourself and lead by example, rather than just like, they're feeling anxious, you have to sort them out. And I think that that's a big piece.
And how moving from kids, parents, and the regular clients, you see, there is a special category which I found out in your website, whom you have helped, is sports people. So they have, my God, the performance anxiety, what not can make them anxious. Anxiousness of playing, anxious of the game outcome, anxious of being selected, anxious about fitness, anxious about everything, like politics within the team. You, there's such a they're pushing themselves to a greater extent. On top of it, they're being challenged with various situations. And you have worked with sports people also. I've seen one testimonial.
Right.
He's a three-time champion of Paralympian, right? So,
Yes.
what kind of work you do, and any suggestions for sports people?
Yeah, I think that there's a huge piece around performance anxiety. I mean, in all areas, not just even sports, but you could relate it to that for sure.
Yes.
And I think one of the interesting things to explore is what I would call musts.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is not my idea. This is from originally, as I understand it, from Dr. Albert Ellis from Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, who talks about, and I have to be careful when I say this in case people mishear, but he referred to it as masturbation.
Yeah.
Not the other thing.
Yes.
Masturbation. But essentially what happens is people can have put a lot of pressure on themselves because they start treating certain things as though they're absolute truths rather than just thoughts or preferences. So a good example of this, and we could try this now, Nizam, but close your eyes and say to yourself in your head the phrase, I have to relax right now. And just notice what that's like. I must relax right now. Notice the feeling.
It creates some sort of uneasiness in my chest and belly.
Right. And now say to yourself instead, I'd like to relax, and notice the difference.
I'd like to relax. That makes a lot of sense.
For me, the difference is with I must relax. There's a demand inbuilt within it, which often leads to tension. Whereas I'd like to relax, it's a preference, but inbuilt within that preference, there is an acceptance that it might not happen. That's the thing that alleviates the pressure. And it's funny because a lot of people can relate to this, whereas, so people might say, well, I don't really have any problems sleeping. I sleep normally okay. But if I have a big meeting the next day, or I have to get up early, or I've got a big exam, I go to bed and I say to myself, it doesn't matter normally, but tonight I have to get a good night's sleep. And inevitably, that's the night they can't sleep.
Yes.
Right? Because there's so much tension in the system. But the reality of it is that there's no universal law that says you have to get some sleep before a big meeting. They'd like to. So if we then translate this and apply it into the world of sports or performance, what can happen sometimes is people can have these demands like, it's the final, therefore I have to play my best. I must perform at my peak. And instead of just being relaxed and having that, like, I'd like this to go well, and allowing all of the training unconsciously to come out, they start trying to like, this is it. It has to be perfect. I must be on form. And they're playing with too much tension in their body. And so all the natural, normal processes that they've spent years developing kind of fall by the wayside because they're now they put too much internal pressure on themselves. Part of this is if we can help people see that mechanism, they begin to have some insight so that they don't fall foul of it. They don't fall for the trap of it anymore.
Okay. And Howard, thank you very much about masturbation.
Right.
And Howard, see, generally we see people who are anxious means they're like, hurried, this, that. There's other opposite side of the people also. Because of anxious, they look like they're smiling a lot, they're relaxed and all that, but they are equally suffering with the anxiousness. Could you please tell about that masked faces behind the mask?
Right. There is a huge disconnect.
Yes.
Between what we perceive what we portray on the outside and what we feel. And in fact, you've just reminded me, over lockdown, my parents, they decided, like many people did during lockdown in the UK, to do a clear out. And they were going through old stuff and they found a book. And it was an old book of mine when I was 15, 16 that I had written. It was a notebook of poetry that I wrote when I was 16, struggling with terrible anxiety. And I wrote poetry back then. I hadn't seen this book in years. I'd forgotten I even did this. And they dropped it around to my house. And I ended up doing, I read a bunch of poems on my YouTube channel. But there's one that cuts right to the heart of this. And I'd like to read it now, if it's okay.
Howard the poet, yes.
Yes, Howard the poet. This was written, here you go. This is from the original notebook. The date is the 28th of the 1st, 1999.
Oh my God, yeah, please.
So these are the words of 16-year-old Howard.
Okay.
And it was a poem called Acting the Part.
Okay.
Just a word of warning. These poems, in a very teenage, angsty way, I always tended to, I always ended in a really like cliched, heartwarming way.
Okay.
It makes me cringe now. But it wasn't because I was better, but I think part of it was I was trying to write myself the happy ending I wanted. But here we go. La, 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 la. Yeah, warm up. Good. Acting the part. I strode right into the middle of the room with a cool and confident air. I looked right into the examiner's eyes and sat down in my chair. But the room was twirling, twisting and turning, and the darkness spiraled in my mind. My heart was racing. My stomach was churning. Why was the world so unkind? I walked down the street with a spring in my step, whistling a melodic song. I looked so contented and happy. How could anything be wrong? But the street was twirling, twisting and turning, and the darkness spiraled in my mind. My heart was racing, my stomach was churning. Why was the world so unkind? I went away appearing calm and relaxed, and looking as though I could cope. I seemed so quiet and composed, but in reality, I could only hope. For everything was twirling, twisting and turning, and the darkness spiraled in my mind. My heart was racing, my stomach was churning. Why was the world so unkind? So, and now it gets cringy. So I went back into the middle of the room with that cool and confident air. I looked back into the examiner's eyes and sat back down in my chair. And now the room wasn't twisting and turning, and the darkness didn't spiral in my mind. My heart wasn't racing, my stomach wasn't churning. I saw the world wasn't unkind. If you help yourself and face up to your fears and trust deep down in your heart, then your fears will soon disintegrate and you won't have to act the part. Thank you. But I was acutely aware that there was this very big difference between what people saw and how I felt. And, you know, it's not a new idea. And I see a lot of people talk about this mental illness being, or mental health being, an invisible battle. If you break a leg, you can see You've got a
Yes.
cast on it. You've got crutches. People go, are you okay?
Yeah.
Whereas you could have an awful lot going on and no one would know.
True.
So I think sometimes, it's often pays to be charitable, and often to before we quickly judge people,
Yes.
for why are you being an asshole? Why are you being difficult? Why are you just to take a moment to go, like, what else have they got going on that I don't know about right now? Could I give them the benefit of the doubt? And even if they are an asshole,
Yeah.
right, and they were just being miserable, having the thought, maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, also serves me better.
Yes.
So I think you're absolutely right to bring that up.
Thank you very much, Howard. Like that too. I didn't expect that you had this phase in your own life, and that poem was very apt. How a boy was going through inside and how he appeared on outside.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. I got very tearful when I read it again for years, and I'd forgotten that I'd done these poems.
Maybe that turns into a book, Howard.
What's that?
Maybe that turns into your next book. Who knows?
Well, you say that. I hadn't thought about putting that into my book, but I am writing a book for adults.
Okay. Okay.
Coming out in I'm hoping March, and it has an unusual title. Some people have been alarmed by the title, but I love it.
Okay.
The title is called "How to Have Anxiety and Panic More." And the reason I'm writing it is because a lot of people feel like a victim to anxiety and panic.
Mhm.
It feels like they're walking down the street and suddenly anxiety smites them down. But the reality of it is that anxiety and panic is a result of a particular set of thinking.
Yes.
So if I can show people the illusion behind how they have anxiety and how they panic more, then by default, it kind of ruins it. You can't fall for it anymore. And plus, it kind of appeals to I have a slightly provocative, cheeky chappiness about me. So I quite like that, I couldn't write another book on the shelves in shops going, just another how to be happy and successful, because we've seen those. They've been done,
Yes.
So I wanted something that was a little bit different.
Yes. Very provocative in title and very interesting as well.
Yes, good.
Wonderful. So, Howard, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for making me comfortable. Like when you said like ask me anything, that's when I like it was a flow, impromptu questions. There's no specific list that okay, let me ask this.
Right.
And it was excellent. And the beautiful part of it was you have transparently said that yes, there were the times where you yourself had been into therapy, that to 3.5 years, and like you also shared that yes, in this 19 years there were situations where you were stuck, and
Right.
that was like very open heart conversation, I should say, very transparent, and I just love this talk, and I hope a lot of people also get benefited and understand, parents, kids, as well as like sports people, like it has touched various dimensions, and I'm expecting that your program for other coaches and therapists also comes very soon, and a lot of people incorporate your methods into their work and also get benefited. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bye, Howard. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.